recording. And I'm going to turn it over to Rodney. This is our last class of before the summer break. Not our last class forever. Don't worry. No panic yet. But we are going to end on a very practical note because Rodney, who was in our first AI journalism lab, which was in the fall, worked on this project for the lab and for his organization. And I think it's very clever. It has multiple layers, and you learn a lot through it. And that's something that I think a lot of people could apply to their organizations, especially to get more in depth with user needs and audience needs and understand the very many things people are expecting from us, really. So I'll turn it over to Rodney.
All right, thank you, Marie. Nice to see everyone. Hello, I'm Rodney Gibbs. I'll start by asking your forgiveness. I have a bit of a summer cold, so I'm a little have a cough, and I might have to jump on mute occasionally to clear my throat. So pardon me for that. But otherwise, I am here and ready to go. So let me share my screen so we can get that out of the way. I'm joining you from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm coaching three people in the class. So um, congratulations on making it this far. Uh, if you're like the people I'm coaching, hopefully you've already gone through your freak out about your capstone, and you're realizing that you can get it done. And Marie and Kyle are not going to flunk you out of college or anything, but they just want you to do something that's meaningful and substantial for your organization, whatever that looks like. So the three folks I'm working with, we had meetings last week, and so like we had a little bit of counseling and a little bit of coaching to get them through. So the project I did last summer, and I've continued to work on since then, is I now call it a user needs buddy. Um, we are a small newsroom. Sorry, we're about 60 small newsrooms. So let me set the context of why I chose this project, and I think why for me, at least, was a good capstone. I'm with this group called the National Trust for Local News. We're a nonprofit group, newish, about 4 years old. It's kind of in some ways a crazy experiment. What we do is we acquire local newsrooms, mostly in rural and small town areas in America. And so we have about 60 of them across three states: Georgia, where I am, state of Maine, and the state of Colorado. Many of them are very small, one person, two people, three people. We have a few that are larger, a couple that are around 10, and then we have one quite large one for us that's about 200, but that's the outlier. So most of them I work with are these small shops. They are not, many of them never had a website until the last year or two. Many of them have been around for 100 years, but solely as a print organization. And so part of what my organization does is when we acquire them, we keep them in local control, but we help them really build up their digital side, which has been, for me personally, my focus. I lead product and AI and audience for our groups. So for some of them, we give them the first websites. For others, they have a website, but frankly, most of them are really poor. And so we upgrade the website. We add newsletters. We talk about SEO. We talk about digital best practices. Um, but as I get into my capstone, like I felt needed to kind of right size my project as well as AI, but for these newsrooms. And I know you come from all sorts of newsrooms around the world, and I'm sure some are small and some are large. But as you know, it's not one size fits all with AI. You really have to, meet your audience and your needs where they are. I'm also real active in the Online News Association. I've been a board member for about 8 years, and I DJ on a community radio station a couple times a month. So that's about me. So this is one of our papers in Houston County, Georgia. It's a town of about, I think, 8,000 people. That's the newsroom right there. Uh, Out back is littered with old newspaper stands that are rusting because they still print, but they don't have stands in every corner like they used to. Uh, So our groups are, as I said, they're small. There's no product people. There's no one that thinks about product or technology. They're largely, there's some exceptions, but they're mostly all editorial, reporter and editor, and a salesperson. Um, so it's, and as I mentioned, we're transforming them all digitally. So it, as I approached the capstone, one thing I had to think about was everyone is having to get digital real fast, even if they're new to it. But there's not a, if you will, a geek in the room to help them. Like it really had to be kind of self-sustaining. They need to be able to be trained, but then work with things on their own. And so that shaped what I did moving into the capstone. Um, so that's kind of the background. So what one thing that we're working with our newsrooms on is the user needs framework. And maybe by show of hands, just show me, are any of you familiar with user needs? You used it or talked about it? Anyone? Yeah, so a few people. Okay, good. Hey, Kristen, I see you there. Um, so for those not familiar, I'll talk about it in a second in depth. But user needs is a framework that was developed by the BBC, and it's been used more in Europe, less so in where I am in North America, but it's starting to come over here. But it's one thing that we've been pushing on our newsrooms because there's a lot of research and results to show that if you use user needs, it can help really grow your reach and grow your audience. But user needs it's not real complicated, but it is a bit abstract and it's kind of subjective. Just when you learn what the user needs model is, you have to kind of apply various filters and decide which user need something fits. And so that can be a challenge, particularly, to be frank, for groups that, like I said, publishing to the web for a lot of our reporters is new. And so when you start talking about like what user need does this story scratch, it makes it, even a little more complicated. Let me jump ahead and I'll go back to that slide. So pardon me for those of you who know what user need is. I'm going to give just like a quick summary of user needs. This is a version of the user need framework. And what it is it's a way of thinking about stories to take a story and ask, okay, what need of a user, what does this satisfy? Um, Most stories in journalism fall into this update me category. You know, this thing happened. We're going to tell you about it. The mayor made a decision and it passed and it happened at 3 o'clock and, 1, 2, 3. It's a very by the book kind of old school journalism. Um, a lot of this research shows is that, there's a lot of other things around this wheel that people go to journalism for. It's not just to find out what just happened, what just happened, what just happened. Like there's some certain sick nerds of us in this group who we feed on that stuff, but most normal people, they kind of live around this wheel. They want to be inspired. They want to be diverted from the news sometimes. They want to be educated. They want to get some perspective, or they want to stay on trend. Excuse me, I got a cough for 1 second. So the user needs model asks the reporter, as you write a story, think about which user need it satisfies. And if a story does really well, you know, and maybe you want to write a subsequent story, like, hey, people really like that story, or I think there's more to tell about this story. I want to write about it again. The way user need model really plays or comes into reality is to say, okay, well, rather than just do a second update me and just, what else can I update about the mayor's decision? We've already talked about it. Maybe I come at it from a different angle, from, and educate me. So instead of the mayor decided this, you educate me like, well, what goes into the budget of, if the mayor approved or whatever it is, you come at it from a different angle. So you have a complementary user need. That's a high level user needs. We don't need to know too much about that though for my capstone. So, um, so what my capstone does is I wanted to create a way to use AI to hopefully simplify that process a little bit, take some of the burden and the cognitive burden really off of the reporter to, after they've written a story to go, which user need does this satisfy? Is this A, B, or C. So a way to analyze the user need and give a little analysis about which of these needs on the circle it satisfies. And then, assuming that they want to pursue it more, or it was a popular story and they feel like people want to know more, suggest headlines, not full stories, but headlines of subsequent stories that are complementary, that serve complementary user needs they can write. Does that make sense? So if a story was an update me, they might want to do a divert me next or an educate me, something that gives it a complementary angle. Um, so I used a Claude project, and I should explain, I guess, now about the rabbits and why they're so odd. Um, in doing this, I use an AI tool to generate the graphics, as I'm sure you can tell. And just for fun, I asked it to not use any human characters, only use rabbits and put them in the style of kind of iconic rock and roll figures. So I think this one earlier was supposed to be Devo right there. And I think we have someone that's supposed to be Kiss, and you'll see David Bowie later on. So anyway, that's my little Easter egg, not very subtle here. Um, so when I was setting out to do after I decided, okay, I'm going to do the user needs analysis, and I'm going to, I think that would be really useful for my little newsrooms because we'd taken them through this training, but then we were getting some feedback that it was kind of complicated, or it was just like number 27 on their list of things to do after they publish a story, so it wasn't getting done. I just set about thinking, okay, what do I want to build this in? And I initially built it as a Claude project. Um, so at the time, this was about this time last year, last summer. Uh, I I was, probably like you, I was going back and forth with the different LLMs. And Claude at that point, I was much more charmed by. I just, for the type of work I was doing, I thought it was really good at creative work, particularly like this headline stuff that I'll show in a second. But it just seemed like a better fit. Now, as I'll talk about later, I'm much more in favor of ChatGPT, but that's why I started with Claude. And I tried it on both at a prototype level, and just Claude gave me better results. So I'm going to show you and talk about the Claude version, and then we'll talk about the updated version, which uses a custom GPT. Let me take a breath there. We check the comments if there's anything going on. Anything I'm missing, Marie or anyone? Are we
Cool.
good to keep going?
Yep.
Okay. Is the user need thing, everyone got a baseline understanding of that? I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Okay. All right. So the initial project I did was pretty straightforward. I did a prompt for Claude, and just to set your expectations, we're going to talk a lot about the particulars of the prompts today. I felt I struggled with that a fair amount when I was in this class, and in working with my folks in your class and I'm coaching, we're talking a lot about the construction of the prompts. So hopefully this is helpful to you to kind of see how mine iterated and my thinking through it. So just be warned, if we're going to dig into a lot of prompts, that's going to be the focus of the bulk of this talk. So this is an excerpt from the original Claude prompt. So you can see here, I set it up as you're a reader of a paper, publishes every day. I ask it to articulate or to, rank each article that it's given as the job it does for a reader. And then I go through and I gave it a short description of each of those needs. I called it inform instead of update, I believe. I gave a little bit of an inform, did the same for divert and
We
the
got the
others.
Zoom meeting in the background.
Oh, I think someone came off mute. Um, and then this jumps down after the break to the end, noting that a story might do multiple jobs. Uh, the headline, I wanted, it's going to give it a headline, and I guess then I was doing the beginning of an article. Then I went to the whole article, but I asked it to score the article from 0 to 1. Why I use 0 to 1 in hindsight, I don't know. Instead of like 1 to 100, which I now use, but That's what I did. And then give it a value of those scores and what it would look like. I think I have, yeah. So I've got the original over here. Oh, and we can go ahead, Maria, I don't know if you have those links. You could share this with people so they can follow along too, if you don't mind, the prompt doc and the deck as well if they want it, but at least the prompt doc. So this is the original prompt from Claude. Uh, so it goes through the inform, explain, connect, enrich, etc. And then asked it, so it can do multiple jobs, rank it, and then after you do that, give 5 headlines of complementary stories, right? Make sense, everyone? Okay. So I just realized I jumped to the prompt and you couldn't see that. I'll change my share in a second. Um, so the way it worked, and this is for the capstone, is I would take an article and I would just copy and paste in the story. So this is a story one of our papers did last summer. This was during the campaign and the presidential campaign in the US when Vice President Tim Walz came through Macon, Georgia, which is a small city in Georgia. Share the previous slide. Sure, Claudio. This one, the prompt. And let me go back and change my screen share settings for a second, just so I can jump back and forth to the prompt and we can see everything together. I'm just going to share my whole desktop. Okay. So in that prompt doc, Marie put in the chat, you have all the prompts I went through in order. So it started with this Claude prompt. This is the original one we're looking at now. Everybody with me? Okay. So you would paste in a story, and here's the big exciting thing it would do. It ranked the story. So this is after it went through the process on that Tim Walz story. It decided that it was 60% an informed story, 30% into connect, 10% explain, and it did not address any of these user needs, investigate, enrich, or provoke. That was helpful. This is a pretty rudimentary graphic, as you know, and the analysis they gave around it was not real deep either. This was more helpful. It then generates 5 possible headlines of a subsequent story the reporter could write that address one of the user needs that the original story did not address. So if you remember this one, it got a 0 on enrich. So the prompt then says, okay, well, here are 5 enriched stories that you might want to think about next. It would do the same for, provoke and investigate. But I'm just showing you a few of those here. And the feedback I got was from reporters and editors, like, oh, it's kind of helpful and it helps me, it was more like it validated, like I thought this was an informed story and this kind of proves I was right, or and the headlines are kind of interesting. Maybe that gives me, but it wasn't like a real enthusiastic, I'm going to use this every day kind of response, but it was helpful. The reason I used headlines instead of other things, I thought about doing summaries. I thought about not writing a whole story, but something a little deeper than a headline was a few things. Like one, I wanted to be directional. I wasn't trying to prescribe. It's not for me to prescribe what the reporter or editor chases next by any means. I'm there to support them and help them. So I wanted to be more directional and fairly loose. I wanted to be hopefully stoke their imagination, by giving them a headline or headlines. My hope was that it would kind of, help them see where they could take this. Not literally, here's your roadmap, go do these 5 things, it would be done. But, open their eyes. It's like, oh, okay. Like I wasn't really sure what an Inspire Me article would look like, but I can imagine an Inspire Me article with that headline. And frankly, we back then and still are, I'm sure you have variations of this, have some resistance to AI in the newsroom about it worrying about threatening jobs, threatening credibility, which are all very valid concerns that need to be talked about. But I thought headlines was a way to really keep a pretty safe distance from anything that would encroach on a journalist's job. It's not like, oh, you wrote a good story. Now we're going to go write two or three more based on your work so that we're cutting you out of that. I didn't want that to be part of it at all. So I did those headlines that way. Excuse me one sec. Any comments or anything at this point? Questions? So let me show you the I'm going to go over to Claude now. I hadn't really messed with it in Claude in a while since I moved on to ChatGPT a while back. And so it's the same prompt. However, as you'll see in a second, Claude really gives a better response now. And I guess that shouldn't be surprising, as we know these models evolve very quickly, and where Claude is today is very different from where it was a year ago. But as an example, I'll show you, like basically still how it works is the same. So let me show you. Let me get my browser up here. I just grabbed a story off one of our paper sites about these Japanese beetles that came into one of our markets. I think it's an annual thing or something like that. So I've already copied the headline and the copy of the article into my clipboard before the class started. So I'm just pasting that in, and then I'm going to let it do its thing. One of the reasons I ended up moving away from Claude was we'll see how it does today, but the original version took quite a while to process it. I mean, it took a minute or so. We'll see how fast this is. Whereas I found ChatGPT, when I started using that for this project, moved a lot faster. And I may have it configured to show its work like this. I don't remember, but we'll get a minute. I'm going to leave that and go back to the deck for a sec, and we'll go back and check on that in a minute. There we go. Okay, it's ready. So for that beetle story, the Japanese beetle arrives for summer. It still has the ratings you'll see here. The graphics are a lot better, right? They're colorful, they're bigger. It doesn't look like something from a 1980s sci-fi movie. It gives a little analysis, which I don't think it was doing last summer, or if it does, it wasn't quite this helpful. This says the article primarily serves enriched job. It's a practical how-to guide for homeowners dealing with Japanese beetles, which I think is correct. It says it has some explain elements, minor inform and connect. And then, so it gives you a little analysis, which is good. And then here are the follow-up story opportunities. You can do an investigative story, about chemical pesticide residues found in local honey, which I assume is a total, hallucination. It's just making something up about honey and pesticides. Yeah, and even here's one. City's Japanese beetle trapping program costs taxpayers 50,000. So it's clearly, making up some stuff. But even then, hopefully, like a reporter using this could say, okay, that's kind of BS. It didn't happen here. It didn't infect the honey, but I could see where I could take that. So that's where, Claude, where I left it with Claude. So looking back then at, you get full screen again. So, I was happy it worked. Like that was good. Uh, you know, Maybe some of you are like I was. I wasn't sure if my project would work and if it would, give me anything useful. So I was happy with that. And as I mentioned a second ago, the feedback was good. It wasn't like this is stupid or it doesn't work, but it was more like, well, that's nice. I'm glad your summer program went well, Rodney. It was good. Um, so I wanted to be better. I wanted reporters to use it more vigorously. And as I said, it was short. it was slow. I mean, the analysis I didn't think was great, bad visuals, and the headlines aren't so great. Um, so at that point, I decided to uh, to move on. I just demoed that to using a custom GPT. And a quick housekeeping note, Marie. I think we talked about a break here, but I'm going faster than I thought, so I think we should just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. We'll see if there's questions at the end.
Yeah. Um, anyway, while I'm paused, any questions so far before I move on to the GPT part of it?
I'm just kind of curious. So for the analysis that you have or entire analysis on the cloud, was there any like the prompt that you shared with us? That's the only prompt that you have given for this entire analysis?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, that was the entire prompt. I wasn't adding files, knowledge files, and it was a pretty, as you see, simple prompt.
yeah, I've never used Claude. So if you have to like tell us like when you use Claude and now you move to the Chat GPT as well. So which AI platform is better for like small organizations like us?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a good answer to definitively say. I find myself trying both of them, and some I use, I'll uh, use one more than others. So I'm sorry to say I don't have a real, concise answer for that. I now tend to use ChatGPT mostly, and just I've been happy with it, with particularly since some of the recent updates in the last couple months. I find that I don't hit my head against the wall. I don't, get a lot of results where I'm like, well, that's kind of sorry or so. Whereas before, when I was bouncing back and forth more, I think I would kind of feel like one didn't do so great, one did well. For a long time, and I've heard people still say this, they feel Claude does better for creative work, for writing, for brainstorming, and Chat does better for analysis and structured work, which I used to find the case, and that's why I did go with Claude initially for this project. But like I said, in the last few months, I've felt ChatGPT, either it upped its game or I've just gotten softer, but it, really serves my needs really well now. Are
And
you
what
using chat primarily? Or go ahead. Sorry, who was that?
that was me, but go ahead, continue with Suresh.
I'm curious what you guys are using. Are you mostly chat GPT?
Right now, like we're using ChatGPT, and I'm like trying to, figure out because my organization is very small, so same the budget is, right? So
Hmm.
our kind of we don't want to end up with like tons of subscription, and at the end
Yeah.
we can't even sustain that all the subscriptions, right, on a long-term basis. So I was trying to figure out what are the best couple platforms that we can use, and we can like continue having subscriptions for those and can better use of those two or let's say max three. So it's still confused because there's so many platforms and they have their own
Yeah.
feature, I guess. So that's a very confusing.
Yeah. I mean, you know, my recommendation, and I know about as much as you just told me. I don't know, obviously don't know much about your organization, but I think ChatGPT is really solid. It does, yes, it adds up to cost. Um, but I've been one impressed, as I said, with how it does. Two, I think the collaborative work, we're not using the Teams version of it, but as I'll go into next, using custom GPTs made it really easier to share the work. It wasn't one of the reasons I moved away from Claude for this particular use case is that it's hard to share that. Um, you know, as I know you guys have had a course or two on custom GPTs, and I'm sure you've played with them on your own. They're easy to share. They're easy to go into that store and sample others. And so I think it depends on your use cases, of course. But if you're trying to create some tools for your newsroom that maybe one or two people develop and others can use, like I think ChatGPT is hands down is a lot easier to use in Claude for that capability. Um, I don't know. And then I don't use Gemini much. I just play with it here and there. So for me, I'm right now I'm like 89% chat GPT and 10 to 20% Claude. Any other questions or anything?
It's really tough to choose one.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you, though.
mean, and it's this cold comfort, but it's not like there's a wrong choice or a right choice. I think you just have to pick one you feel is the right fit for you. They're both changing so fast. They're both really good. Um, but and I think the switching costs are not that bad. So if 6 months from now you decide we really should be in the other, it would be a pain probably to move your workflows and things, but uh, it's not the end of the world. Yes. Any other comments or anything before we move on? Oh yeah, and Marie makes a good point about Gemini gems. Yeah. Yeah, in Notebook LM, I've used that for other use cases, but not I didn't for this project, obviously. But okay, thanks for sharing what they're using. Great. Love it. We've been using Notebook LM a lot more in the newsroom directly with like a lot of the reporters like it, a lot of either the really data-based reporters or the investigative ones like it, just because obviously they can throw a bunch of stuff in there and then have a really kind of closed system that they're playing with and querying and things like that. Okay. So, this kind of, I put this out at the end of basically at the end of the CUNY program last year. I put it out within our newsrooms. We have some AI adopters and I used it in some of the training programs we ran. But as I said, it wasn't like bear hugged, just like, this is great, give us more. So I kind of let it sit for a while and then came back to it this spring to see how I can improve it. And I decided to really just reimagine it altogether. For the reasons I mentioned about Claude, and I just started thinking about like, are there better ways that I could do it? So the objectives I had was, I want it to be more nuanced. I want it to be, more useful to the editors and reporters. I think the categorization and the headlines is useful, but I was hoping maybe to, kind of make it almost impossible for them to turn down. Like really meet them where they are. They're very busy, as you know. Many of you are reporters and editors, I'm sure. And so trying to like make it just like as helpful and concise a product for them as possible. I wanted to make it easier to share, as I just talked about. Claude projects aren't that easy to share. And then the question, I'm sorry, I forgot who asked the question a few minutes ago, but I didn't use knowledge files, so I was just working from the prompt, which worked okay. But I felt like, well, maybe if I take advantage of the knowledge files, I could get more nuanced headlines. I could get more realistic headlines. I could get better analysis, do something with that. So that's what I set out to do with I'll call it phase 2 of this. And I like to try to guess which bands these rabbits are in. I have no idea, but maybe you can tell me in chat. Okay. So this time around, I tried something different. And maybe this is a common practice. Maybe you've talked about it in your classes. Nikita has told you this. I don't know. But this time, sorry, instead of kind of starting with me writing the prompt, I decided like, I'm going to see if the LLM can write its own prompt and have it, really guide me through the prompt writing process and then iterate with it. And use AI to get feedback, and I will be the human in the loop, and I will refine it, and I will critique it. But I'm going to see if I get better results that way. And I did, as I'll walk you through, I did kind of ping pong back and forth quite a bit between um, ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity. Just one, to see which gave better results, but two, because particularly with Perplexity, it has I think a more unique thing it does. I needed it for a specific task, but I was basically not playing them against each other, but just using them to toss this potato around and see if I got a better result from that. All right, does that make sense? What I'm gonna as a framing, and we'll go into what that looks like. Okay. All right. So now I'm gonna go a lot into the prompts for this next part. So, so if you're in this Google Doc I put together, this first one was the original prompt, and then this number two, the Chat GPT, was where I started from scratch again. And this time, instead of, like I said, me trying to prompt it myself, I asked ChatGPT, I said, help me forge a prompt that reviews and categorizes a journalism story by which user need it addresses. Then I kind of highlight what the user needs framework is, where it came from. And then I say, tell me which complementary user need subsequent story that could have been written more clearly, I'm sure, but could address and present sample headlines of those future things. So basically, I'm telling it like, what I want the output to be. I want you to create this prompt for me that will do a user needs analysis and then suggest headlines. Basically do what I did on my capstone, but you write the prompt for me. It's the lazy man's way to do it. And so everyone see that the prompts, and you got access to this doc, so you can see it. It came back with pretty thorough results. So it gave me this idea. I'm not going to read this to you, but you can read it in your own time. But identity and purpose, about how it wants to do the structure. I thought was interesting how it broke it down into identity and purpose. It gave steps that it wants to go through. You can see here it outlines the different user needs, what they are, and goes through. We're going to visualize it, the user need. We're going to suggest complementary user needs, generate sample headlines, and then output it all in clear instructions. It keeps going and going. Talks about the visual representation, and then here's the headline stuff. I'll shrink that down again. Okay, so I took that and dropped it into ChatGPT, and had it to see what it would do. And I didn't say each iteration along the way. I was kind of updating in the same custom GPT, so I can't show you like the first version, but I thought it was really interesting and helpful to me. Where did that go? Sorry, I'm trying to get back to the prompt doc. To basically be meta about it, to ask the LLM to write its own prompt. So have any of you tried that? Have you asked it to prompt itself? And what kind of results have you had? Has it been helpful? What's it been like? Christian or Prachi, I see you there. Can you?
Yeah, I think I've tried a lot. Every time I have, I think even for image generation, I
Mhm.
asked it to analyze an image and then what would be a prompt that would be better, like what would be the prompt for it to recreate a kind of that image or what I was looking for. So I think many of the times I found it really helpful. I've also switched between different tools to first ask for a prompt and then use that prompt for another tool and see how that works. So I think it's also interesting. Many of the times the analysis match, sometimes they don't. But I think it does a great job of telling me what it needs, and then it's easier to get the kind of result I want from it.
Yeah, I think mine's been about the same deal. I've used it just to prompt itself. But I think where it's been the most helpful, it's been on maxed out chats. When I want to continue that chat, I just tell them to give me a whole prompt and summary of what we were doing so I could put that into another one. And that's been the most helpful. But I also have done just regular prompts. And they work pretty well for the most part because I could just go back and ask it to redo it or fix it till it works. and I can tell it exactly what's wrong or what isn't working and tell me exactly what to move.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had similar responses or results. I I guess I think I have an example later too. Like as I refined it more, I was impressed that it started getting pretty nuanced in its feedback, and it gave me, I think, some stuff in the last couple versions or couple uh, edits that really like were nice little tweaks that were kind of subtle but really made a difference. Anyone else had experience or feedback on kind of prompting to prompt? Yeah. Okay. Um, so the initial version that this came up with was good, and I liked it, but it wasn't that different than the Claude, as I recall. This was a couple months ago, uh, but it was in custom GPT, which I liked, and the graphics were better, as I recall. So let me get back to my deck. Um, so this is where I started bouncing back and forth between the two, and I took it. Then I took it into Claude, and to be clear, I don't have like a real smart reason I was bouncing between the two. It was just, I felt like Chat GPT did a good job. I think I tweaked it a little bit. I didn't just take what it gave me, but then I was like, will it benefit as from someone said, like from kind of going back and forth, getting a different take on it. So then by taking it into prompt into Claude, I asked it to act as an expert in crafting custom GPTs and help me revise this prompt. And so this is pasting in that prompt. And then, I gave it the prompt that GPT had given me, and it gave me a revised version. And then I, took it back to GPT again. So I went back and forth for quite a few times. And you can see like the third time, I know I'm kind of just scrolling through a bunch of stuff, but it started getting more detailed, started getting, I think, more helpful. And one thing that got really good was at some iteration, I started focusing on the visualization because I felt that needed to be, really clear and simple and kind of eye-catching. Sorry, I'm gonna cough one more time. Pardon me. And so it gave me this version that I'll show you it live in a few minutes, but that was a good step forward too to get the visual side more up to par. Okay, so after going back and forth a few times, I got the prompt where I liked it. So I have too many windows open. And use Claude and all. And went back and then polished the prompt even. So when the prompt was, kind of where I liked it, and got to pretty final phase, I then started looking at the knowledge file. You can upload knowledge files to the custom GPT, and those are files. It can be reference docs, it can be things you create, it could be articles, it could be government reports, whatever you think would help the thing. But I was trying to find what is the right mix of having an authoritative, helpful analysis of user needs without being wonky, because most journalists, to be clear, probably don't care too much about user needs. They care about reaching more audience, so they don't care about the theory, really. They want the results. So I was trying to think, how can I get the most out of user needs? I don't want it to be wonky or boring, but I want it to be accurate and helpful. And I asked at some point in here, I asked one of the LLMs, like, what are things I could add to this prompt as a knowledge file that would improve the output and the accuracy of the analysis? and it suggested um, a user needs definition document. And that was essentially like I think a research document on defining user needs, and particularly not just like the primary definitions, which is pretty straightforward, but emphasis on edge cases, which are harder to squarely categorize in one of those categories. And then emphasis on real world headlines, because as we saw in some of the sample headlines I showed earlier, some are just total hallucination BS. Some are kind of, just not great headlines. So for this part, I decided to use Perplexity to generate the knowledge file, at least the bare or the bulk of it. And so I went into Perplexity, and you guys have used Perplexity in class, I'm sure, right? Yeah. And, prompted Perplexity to, I said, I'm going to improve the custom GPT's analysis. I need better headline suggestions. Oh, no, this is not my prompt. Sorry. I'm reading my notes. Let me open up the Perplexity prompt. Okay. I didn't make that any bigger. Okay. So yeah, I said, you're a user needs expert for the journalism industry, generate a user guide, detailed description of each user need, edge cases, boundary situations, and industry-specific interpretations. And I use the deep research mode, which I find super helpful to use on occasion. And so is everyone familiar with the deep research mode? Should I say a word on that, or have you guys covered that? Got it? Okay. All right. Thank you. And so it created, it took a little time and then created this user needs doc, which is great. You got the link to this if you want to look at it. But then what really helped me after we got the doc is then I said, okay, I want, 10 headline examples, real headlines from real publications under each category. Because I'm trying to think, how can I seed the prompt with, real world examples to hopefully give it the ammunition needs to create real world or helpful, realistic docs, headlines. And so it went through and found this, if I iterate on this more, I think I would refine this down to like our publications so that it, has our voice. It has my publications, I'm not working in the Philippines, for example. I'm not working or covering Russia's war in Ukraine. So, I might want to narrow it down to like what some of these small town papers I work with cover. And so it's got their voice and their, kind of thing. But in general, I think this was great. And so I had to go through and do that. And then give me, you see, I did it for each of the user needs, connect me, help me. And then I incorporated that back into the main document, right? And so then I went in and used that as a knowledge file into the main document. And that's what formed the final prompt. And maybe, Marie, this is a good point to take like a 5-minute break, and then we can come back and look at the final custom GPT and play with it some. How does that sound?
Yeah,
I
I
need
think
to.
if everybody's on board, we can take a 10-minute break, come back, or like 8-minute break, come back at the hour. Yeah, so take a little rest, go have some water, Rodney. Thank you for powering.
Yes. Yes.
All right, see
Thank
you
you.
in 8 minutes.
All right. Thank you.
Is everyone back? Maybe we can wait a minute.
I like your Space Invaders, Marie.
Oh yeah, so one side is Space Invaders, and then it's Minecraft on the other.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's all the generations. I really like your approach, Rodney, to like use different platforms, because I usually like when I do something in AI, I will just stick with one platform, and I thought about like kind of pitting them against the other just to see if you can refine the work,
Yeah.
not just
Well,
compare, but
yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because, I mean, one, I think they inherently kind of approach it differently just based on how I've set them up and what they've, learned about me. But I'll go in a second. I think some of the nuanced stuff that Claude gave, some of the polish ideas were really, really nice, really sharp. But um,
Right.
I
Yeah.
could have done it just sticking with one, but it was also a way for me to kick the tires on both of them and see how they did.
Hmm. Yeah, experiment.
Yeah.
All right,
Mhm.
I think we can start again safely.
Okay. Just share my screen again. Welcome back, everyone. Any comments or thoughts before I jump back in? No. Quiet class today. All right. So the last thing I did is, and as I just mentioned, is I ran it through Claude one more time, and I wasn't just as I what I did was pretty specific. I said, I kind of set it up again. You're an expert in prompting. Uh, Critique this, and I think I said suggest 10 ways to make it more useful for a busy newsroom reporter, editor, something like that. And it gave me several, and these five I thought were really, really helpful. So, I just highlighted them here. They were actually, the feedback was longer. I just cut and pasted uh, the gist of it. But simplifying the scoring, I touched on that a few minutes ago. I think it made a lot of sense. Like the reporters really don't care about the score more than just want to know what it is. Make the follow-up headlines more newsroom ready. The initial way they were sounding were pretty stiff and academic. And so with all these, I had to go revise, I said revise the prompt to make this work. And it gave me suggestions. I did a little massaging, but mostly took what it said. So like for this one, you can go dig into the prompt doc if you want to see what it said. But there's a line it added in there about make them punchier, conversational, something like that, which really made a nice touch. Um, this is one you'll see in a second, said add timing guidance for each follow-up. So rather than just, a bunch of headlines, it now gives a little context about like, these would be the type of, if you want to do this type of user need, this would be really great in the next day or two. Versus this type of user need, if you want to write a story under that, maybe within the next month. That might be like an analysis piece or a timeline or something else like that. The explanations in general were kind of wordy, so it just made it really cut that down. And then one thing I really liked is it added a little quick pitch line for each subsequent user need. You'll see that in a sec. But instead of just giving you if you remember the original version, I don't know if I can go back up to it. Just basically gave you a bunch of headlines, right? The quick pitch gives you some context, like, so that timeline would say enrich, you'll see, this would be good in the next week or two. And then the quick pitch is like the actual quick pitch that, so that say a reporter might say to her editor, hey, I want to do a follow-up that's capitalizes on this. You'll see in a sec. But anyway, those are all, I thought, really good ideas. They just added a little polish and nuance to the prompt. Okay, so this is my favorite rabbit one that came out of that, by the way. So let's go over to ChatGPT and see it working. Pardon me. Okay, so this is the prompt. You have access to it. It's not a public prompt, but if you have the link, you can access it. I think I'll make it public at some point. But you'll see a little summary. I gave it some sample prompts. Does anyone know who this woman is, by the way? This is an obscure film nerd question.
He's Girl Friday.
Thank you. Gold star. Yeah. It's a classic journalism film in the States. So, uh, it's Rosalind Russell, who's fantastic, hilarious actress and a great film. So anyway, here's the buddy. Um, so I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna use that same story about the Beatles I had before. I've still got it here on my clipboard. Um, the, yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna put it through. Sorry, the Zoom controls are in the way, and let it run. So first of all, really fast, right? It's like instantaneous. When I did the initial capstone last summer, it took, like I said, a minute or two to churn. And these aren't super long investigative stories. Like the type of stories our publications do tend to be, we're community newspapers. They tend to be pretty short stories. But I thought this was great just to give a quick, very, for busy newsrooms to make it really fast. So you'll see it's got the headline, These Japanese Beatles Arrive. Here's the scoring system, much more visual than the first version of the capstone. I think the knowledge document made this a lot more accurate. We've got a couple people in our news organizations who are really deep in user needs, just super nerds about it. And they, gave me the thumbs up. They felt like these were hitting the right notes really well. So I felt pretty good about the scoring of it. Whereas before I thought it was a little more like throwing darts, like, well, it sounds kind of good. I like that it adds a little description now. And so it kind of, gives you some context of why it thinks it's a help me article, and then like why there's a little bit of a divert me in it. So it gives you a little summary of the article. And then we get to the follow-up, and this is where I really think made a big difference. So if you remember before, it just gave you the articles. So now it gives you the complementary user need. So if you want to come at it from a give me perspective point of view, this is that timing thing. Suggest you do this in the next 48 hours because that, say that story about the Beatles just came out. People are still, probably familiar with it. It's that time of year when the Beatles infest. So you might want to, in the next 48 hours, give them perspective. And then the quick pitch part, this is what I was trying to explain a second ago. So in this example, the quick pitch is, let's zoom out to explore the broader ecological and economic impact of invasive species like Japanese beetles. Um, so, I think these, in my mind, are just, again, not to replace in anything that the journalists do, but just kind of help them visualize and get their head around. Like if I want to do an update me about the Japanese beetles, is it something around giving readers a timely alert with real-time regional sightings and pest forecast? I think like those seem very familiar, very relatable. And then, by having the headlines, then the reporters could and editors, could kind of look at these and go, I could see us doing something like that. Maybe not that way, but directionally, that's it. And so, that's the bulk of it. That's how it works. Um, so I've, you know, since I revised it, I put it back out to the reporters and editors as an updated version. And um, what I'll tell you what they said in a minute. How about you guys go try it now? Let's do that. Everyone take a minute and try it. Here's the bit.ly for it. It's bit.ly/user needs buddy.
I just tried and it works in Spanish.
Whoa! I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I love it.
Oh, wow. Also, I've learned too, this wasn't the way when I originally built it, that I think because now ChatGPT can search real-time web, if your article is not behind a paywall, you can just put the URL in there as well. You don't have to copy and paste the body of the article. So you could try that as well. But I mean, one, I want you to try it too. I'd love your feedback, particularly if you're familiar with the story you're throwing in there. Does it seem accurate in the way it analyzes it? Are the suggested follow-up stories, kind of intriguing? Do they seem kind of off base? I'd love to hear what you're seeing.
I have one question.
Hmm.
Was there any discussion amongst the newsrooms around, putting your stories into the model, where we a lot of the times we think about the training that it does based on the stories that we provide. So was there any concerns that, oh, we are, pasting our stories into the model? It might be training on the information that we are providing it. Any security, safety, privacy concerns?
I mean, we talked about that, but we do allow um, LLMs for the most part. We have a few sites we block because for different reasons, but we allow LLMs and other services to scrape our sites now. So our thinking was that, it's already out there for training purposes, these articles. So I didn't have any concerns about, kind of voluntarily giving it individual articles.
Got it.
Mhm. Anyone else give it a try and have?
Should we give people maybe 10 minutes to
Sure.
enter a story and see? I'll let you, I won't send you to like breakout rooms or anything, but just take the next until 22 after the hour to just play with it and then we'll debrief.
Yeah. And if you could do that too, I'd love if some of you would share your screen after that and maybe talk about what you got.
Pressure.
Can I share my screen? I really like the ideas
Sure.
that it's giving. Where'd you go?
Does everyone have permission, Marie? Do we have to change anything for them to share?
Nope.
It's
Jump
going.
ahead.
It should be okay now. Yeah.
So I put in a recent story that we published on Saturday. The protester was um, arrested on their way to Pride, rearrested on some like trumped up charges stemming from a big protest against ICE that happened last week. I pasted in the story, um, and it really accurately, broke down the user needs. That it was like an update me, gave perspective, all of that. Um, and the summary is spot on. I'm kind of impressed of like how spot on the summary is. Usually, I don't know, I feel like a lot of ChatGPT is like not as accurate. So this is a good one. And then I really like the follow-up stories, especially the educate me, because this really falls into our style of news of like, helping people understand things that normal people just don't have exposure to. Like, a lot of people don't have exposure to the court system. Um, so this is a really cool idea that I think I'm going to pitch to my team. And then this is also another really good one, the like giving them practical steps to protect themselves at protests and know their rights. That is also very much up our alley. Um, the Inspire Me is also really cool. Um, yeah,
Nice.
I'm gonna copy paste this into our story ideas channel.
Please do.
Thanks, Rodney.
Please do. Yeah. Glad you use it. Is there anything I'm getting some user testing here, of course. You know, I intentionally also truncated it at the end because it kept trying to, as Chat GPT does to offer follow-up stuff, like, do you want me to draft a version for you? Do you want me to, call your senator or whatever it was? And I, it took a little doing, but I made it just give you the headlines and stop, because part of it is like, again, back to that job security thing and trying to be really respectful of the newsroom's sensitivities. I didn't even want even though it's not my intention, I don't want GPT to start offering to write stories for people because I think I would certainly step on some toes with that. But anyway, Valerie, to you and others, like, are there any follow-ups that you could think of that might be helpful that either that it prompts you for or asks you for or suggest, or is like just kind of that pretty concise report, do you feel like, sufficient?
I feel like the concise report is pretty good. I get kind of annoyed when it's like, do you want me to do this? And
Hmm.
then I'm like, wait, do I? And then it like adds just more, I don't know. I like it when it just kind of does what I asked it to do and
Yeah.
then doesn't waste any energy like trying to do more. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Anyone else try it? Anyone want to share their
I
screen or
I
talk about it?
I tried it with in Amharic. So my publication is basically in Amharic for readers in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I have been having a very hard time trying to use AI because, like, the translation is so sketchy and mostly inaccurate. This one works really perfectly, and like the ideas, especially the follow-up ideas, are really awesome. And some of the things, like, I just they've been hitting me. How didn't I think of this? Like, this makes total sense now. So when I say it, and yeah, it's really helpful.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, is it a Spanish language publication you have, you said, or
Amharic,
Arabic? Okay. Mhm.
Amharic, which is language in Ethiopia.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right.
I couldn't share my screen too, and I ran a couple of stories.
Go ahead, Christian. You should be able to.
Let me see. It's been with like word options. Okay.
You're not? Okay, let me make
You know what? I need to figure some stuff out. I think last time you gave me the same thing. There's some security settings on my computer that don't let me do that. Because I tried last time and I couldn't do it.
Do you want to tell us a little bit? Or
Uh,
can you fix it, you think?
yeah, I think so. I just need to I just never took the time to actually.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anybody else in the meantime?
I can share.
Great. Thank you.
Let me see which screen. ChatGPT. Okay. All right. Are you guys able to see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So I did just my recent article. This is in Nepali. If you see, if you're kind of wondering what kind of language is this, this is Nepali language. And headline, definitely they took the headlines from there and they give me the update me 60%, give me perspective 30%, inspire me 10%. And the fact that I love about this is like the pitch that, and then the perspective, and the idea that turn the story into analytical breakdown of what this means for NYC politics, ICE authority, and civil rights. And this is the news about just happened like an hour ago. Brad Lander was arrested by ICE. He was detained.
Is he the comptroller who was?
Controller in New York. He is still a controller, and he is the
Mhm.
candidate of the mayoral election.
Oh, I didn't realize he's mayor candidate too. Wow.
Yeah, so he got arrested by ICE, and that's what I was trying to review this article. And the another educate me section, there's a confusion about what ICE and legal can legally do. This is a teachable moment. And the story is the right-based explainer on ICE's powers, judicial warrants, and citizens' legal standing. And inspired me pictures. This is a story of solidarity in action with broader meaning for immigrant communities. So it's pretty amazing the way that it just gave me all the pitching for different stories. This is pretty like helpful for the team to just follow up on the same story, or they just get the ideas for the different story with the current issues.
Mhm.
So that's an
Wonderful.
update. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
remarkable to me, all these how well it's handling different languages. I didn't realize it did that. From you're telling me, three of you from tried different languages, and it's worked well. It's
Yeah,
wonderful to hear.
completely in Nepali. For my language, I think Henak, I don't know if you tried the Gemini. Gemini seems pretty good with the languages these days, Google. So I don't know if you have tried that. But the structure of sentence in my language is always a little bit issue in both ChatGPT and Gemini both. But these days, Gemini seems doing a way better than ChatGPT when it comes to the language. But for this part, like it just got all the message, everything without any error. So I was kind of pretty impressed. So yeah, this looks great. I love it.
Okay.
So I can share my screen. Can share my screen. Let me see. So I just ran an article which we are about to publish. We had Reimagining Journalism 2025 over the weekend, and it's set to be published. So I just ran your this thing, and this is how it broke it down. It says user needs, application, and suggested enhancements. Help me explain or help me understand. And this is what it said, which parts of the article dealt with it. Make me feel connected, and then help me take action and give me a perspective. So basically, it broke up the article. These are the prompts, and then this is how he broke up the article. And so I think it's fine. I'll incorporate it in what I'm doing.
I'm sorry, did you paste in a full article?
No, the prompt is directly under the article.
Okay.
This is the article I wrote. This is the article. So I just went and just dropped it under it. This is the article that I wrote.
Okay.
So, and then I generated some LinkedIn and stuff like that, some social media. So I just went ahead and dropped it right at the bottom of the article to evaluate. It started to say, what did I want with it?
I see. You dropped a link in there. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I just dropped your needs, user needs. It says, thank you for sharing the link.
Right.
It appears is a shortened form of, could you confirm what this link is intended for? So I just gave a little more. Is a prompt resource, so it now went ahead and analyzed it.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, you could take your article and drop it into the if you open that link, straight to the custom GPT, and it would give you some more analysis on your article as well. That might be helpful.
So if I take the article and drop it inside.
Yeah. So do you want to go ahead and can you open that, just get that bit.ly link if you open that? You just drop it in your browser, or you might be able to click on it. Yeah. There you go. Yep. So now if the article you wrote, if it's a public link, you could I just add the link. If it's not, you can copy and paste the article in there. Or you could, if it's a PDF or something, it'll take that, I bet. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So this would be analyzing what you wrote. I think before it was getting a little confused. It was kind of, you're trying to add it in a different way.
Do you feel like it's correct, Dr. Eric?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Sure.
I see that Christian is back. Christian, did you fix your security issue?
I hope so. It made me restart the Zoom, so I hope it did fix it.
Are you insecure now, Christian, or secure?
I guess,
Secure.
right? Yeah, I just had to click a button saying that I would allow Zoom to record my things. Let's see. If you go to this.
Yeah, it's coming. There we go.
Right? You guys can
You
see
can
my
see your saw your Slack for a second. Now, yeah, we see it.
all right. So pretty much just dropped yeah, I had to go to Slack to actually find the Zoom link again. But I just dropped the website, the site there.
Oh, good.
If you know, analyze the story, gave me different things. Quick summary, I think is pretty on point. It's a contextual feature examining the uncertain status of undocumented families in California Central Valley, mixing community voices, policy context, and explanation of systematic obstacles. I like the follow-up opportunities just to do more to that, like how to find free legal help if you're undocumented in the Valley, fight organizations. I had like different things for inspire me, and the timing it was like 1 week, 1 to 2 weeks, some evergreen stuff, and I did that one. After that, I actually just threw one in Spanish too to try it, and I like how it was everything in Spanish, but the headlines were all in Spanish, so that kind of worked out, especially in English.
Did the headlines seem, plausible, or what do you think about them?
Yeah. It's kind of. Let me see, because I actually run it in English too. So let me see if they're the same. Oh, so it's weird. So the Spanish version, here like the English version is like lab updates where ICE is operating. This week's protest rules, community alert. But in the Spanish, it was more. Um, like more community involved. Because this one is how did a web of neighbors protect their immigrant families? The pastor that converted his church into a safe place. Uh, Stories of solidarity. Volunteers organized transport and legal help. And then that same section in the Inspire Me. Actually, no, it's kind of the same. Sorry, they were doing like that was 2 and this was 3. But yeah, no, I think that's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. That's good. Excellent. All right, I've got a little more I can talk about, but anyone else having screen shares examples you want to do? Okay. All right. Do you mind stop sharing, Christian, and I'll share mine again?
Oh, yeah, I thought it would be automatic.
Now that he can share, he wants to share all the time.
Yeah, yes.
And how do I stop sharing? It wasn't really like a.
There should be a button at the top that says stop share.
Okay, I see that one. All right, that did it.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much. That was super helpful and validating to that. Particularly with different languages and different just top types of journalism you're doing. It's encouraging. It might feel good about what I did, but I have to begrudgingly give credit to Chat GPT for particularly on the language support. Like, as many of you know, it hasn't been great at various languages, so it's kind of making my head spin that you guys say it's working well. So like I said, I put it back out in our group and it's got some feedback, so one of our editors in Portland really liked it. So it was inspiring them to do follow-ups. we have a reporter in Denver who just covers education and really like very, very local areas, like high school districts on the outskirts of Denver. And I gave her good follow-up ideas and gave her some angles she hadn't thought of. And then in Macon, close to where I am, editor found it inspiring. So it was all good to hear. I'm helpful about that. So, question for you, and this is a question, frankly, I'm wrestling with is, it's one thing to get feedback and to have people kick the tires. The challenge I find with lots of products, particularly AI products, is how to really incorporate them, both get buy-in from the newsroom that they want to use it, but to kind of get it ingested and part of the habit, part of the workflows. With that, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. So I'm, working on that now. One thing we're doing is we have ongoing AI training, so we're going to start putting this as one piece of that, just to, as a way to show people some practical, helpful ways that AI can be useful to them. We also have user needs training that we do, so we're going to pull that into there. But I don't know. This is one I'm struggling with, and I think it's some ways universal, some ways it's because we have these small newsrooms, but just getting adoption for these and just building it into the routine. So it's not something that people use when I tap them on the shoulder and remind them, but I want them to use it on their own. I don't know. Anyone have thoughts on how you would do this? Any advice for me?
Thinking. It's tough.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think really just it has to be it's about the stakeholders, who's in charge of this, and they have to like it, or there has to be one person that likes it and wants to fight for it to be used. I mean, just about convincing that one person, because you have the great tool, but if the person in charge doesn't like it, so you have to be able to, I guess, just to sell it, to show what it is and get that one stakeholder in, and then sure people start using it. Like the cool thing about here is like a lot of the people here, they are kind of like the decision makers in the organization, so they can do it. So, I mean, it's just kind of see if they like it and they want to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. But, my background is product work in newsrooms, and that's what Christian's suggesting is similar to what I've done with, not this is before AI, but emerging tech and new tools is just, I find, and you'll probably, many of you may have had similar experiences. Like it rarely works, I find, when you kind of mandate or from the top down go, we're going to use this tool now, everyone go do it. Like people don't like that. So it's much better. I appreciate what you said, Christian, I think, and I need to find more kind of champions and individual advocates, because I think if you find people to use it and they kind of rally it or say this works well for me, then others look at them and go, oh, if Christian likes it, it must be good. So that's a good idea. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's very very good for balancing according to the user model. Very, and a lot of ideas for the following up. And also I was thinking about, because I like to create content for social media, and I was already like automatically seeing content when I was seeing the following up.
Oh, you're several steps ahead. That's good. Yeah. Okay.
If I have
Sorry.
to add for Ethiopia, it's a very small newsroom. We have the flexibility of adopting whatever we put our hands on. So definitely I'm going to start using this. In fact, I see potential for branching out into explainer videos for TikTok, because it was in a conversation with my team recently. So this, like, it has like leading stories that suggest like that we can follow up after the stories that we already made. So I really find this one helpful.
Oh, good. That's great to hear. Yeah. I'll keep it open. You're welcome to share it with anyone, and like I said, I'll make it public so people can discover it. Right now, you have to have the link to find it, but um, yeah, that's what it's for, is to be used. So please, and if you have feedback, I'll share my contact info at the end. But if you see things that don't work well, or you don't like, or it could be better if it did this or that, I'm all ears. Okay. So kind of putting it back in the context of the capstone and having, being having a year back or more to look kind of reflect on it. And Marie, you're a better critique of capstones than I am, but from my point of view, I think what made it kind of a good capstone is that I had a clearly defined problem. We were starting to introduce user needs. It was part of a bigger digital transformation effort with a lot of our little newsrooms. And unlike, say, like you need to publish to the website at least once a day, which is a pretty, clear directive, you need to be thinking about how you address various user needs is an abstract concept and just was a lot to get people's heads around. So it was a real problem we had in our newsroom at the time. We continue to have. And so it was a very clear thing that AI could help do it. As you saw, particularly with that initial Claude version I did, I made a long prompt, but it was basically a long prompt, so it wasn't like I did a lot of thinking, I did some researching, I did a lot of talking to people, but the actual crafting of the prompt and the AI part was not a Herculean effort. So it was it was a very realistic scope. It was something I could do over the summer break and, came back for the capstone presentation with more or less, something like you saw in the slides at the beginning. And it's, like I said, it's real direct. Like we were struggling with user needs, and this was a real thing to do it. I've highlighted the challenges I had along the way. I won't go through those line by line, but I think it's worked out well with the refining. So, where I want to take it next is expand to more newsrooms. I've opened it up to all of our 60, but just by self-selection, there's probably only 15 or 20 that have tried it. So I'm going to push it to more. I'm sharing it with you. I've shared it with a few friends, but I want just more newsrooms in the ecosystem around the world to try it and give me feedback. And then eventually, maybe this reversion, I would love to make, I've played a very little bit of making it a web application. So you wouldn't have to go into ChatGPT, which is not a huge thing, but it could be a way they could stand on its own and wouldn't be limited to people with GPT accounts. But that's more down the road. And the last thing I really want to do, particularly now that I've revised it and put it in as a custom GPT and got positive feedback from our reporters, is I shared with you anecdotal feedback, kind of like you shared with me today, just like, oh, this is really interesting. This is helpful. This is inspiring me to pursue this story more. But I don't know, and I haven't tracked whether any of our reporters and editors have taken that to the next step. Like, hey, it suggested this kind of angle, and I pursued it, and it worked out well, and that story did just as well as the first one, whatever it is. So I'd like to track the actual outcomes of this as well as a next step. All right. That's all I have. We can spend a little time on Q&A or any other questions you have, but thank you very much. I appreciate you listening and giving me feedback and trying this thing out.
Thank you, Rodney.
Mm-hmm.
Any last question for Rodney?
This was great. Thank you for sharing with us, Rodney.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for indulging my silly rock and roll rabbits.
I love them. They're very cute.
I'm very curious about their life, their story. I want to know more.
I assume this one, I know it's supposed to be David Bowie, but I wonder if it picked up on the fact that I said I was a DJ, and so it threw the record player and the microphone in there. And
Interesting.
Just
then
kidding.
the quill pen with, it looks like sheet music. Like, it's very odd.
This bunny has a lot going on.
Yes.
Several gigs, several side jobs there.
Yes.
Ronnie, not related to this today's session, but just wanted like I'm very curious about things like AI platforms and the uses of AI for the small newsrooms, right? What do you think? What are the areas that you, in your experience, you have seen small newsrooms are using AI for? Like in which area you have seen like being used mostly?
Um, so in automation and ways to cut time, just that are
Mhm.
simplifying time. Um, I've seen some traction with, I mean, it's similar to what I did with this user needs, but uh, tools that um, save time and fulfill a particular need. So this is personal to our newsrooms, but with part of this digital transformation effort, as I said at the beginning, a lot of the newsrooms had not had websites before, or if they did, they were just super rudimentary websites that they put up a PDF of their paper once a week, and that was the website. And so part of our work was, as I said, to give them a website and some training and make them a digital publisher as well as a print publisher. And with that, there were things like SEO and writing web headlines versus print headlines, generating alt text for photos. That's were all really new concepts to our reporters because they just haven't been working in web publishing for the last many years. So I've created some kind of things, kind of like this user buddy thing to create alt text for photos that some people are using, to cut down, save some time on that. Notebook LMs, I find people are very eager to use, reporters, just because it's like a digital filing cabinet and it can make sense of a lot of the stuff they have. Uh, that's a big one. Um, I don't know. I've been trying to encourage people, and I've seen some people make headway with it, of using it as, trying to get out of the mindset of thinking about it as a content creator. Because as I'm sure you guys have talked about, like with good reason, there's a lot of concerns about AI generating journalism that it goes out to the world, right? You have to have a human in the loop, and there's risk with that, and all those ethical questions. Um, but some of the stuff I've seen some small newsrooms really get traction with is backing up, well before that. I think of it as thought partnership, to brainstorm, to research, to say I'm interviewing, the coach of the high school team about the season, and here's my last 5 articles, interviewing him every year, and whatever it is, and like give me, help me brainstorm 10 ways I can approach this, because I every year we have to interview the high school coach, it's just like that kind of thing you would talk to your colleagues about, if you had a colleague who was willing to talk about it, or if they're open to it at 2 in the morning when you're thinking about it. But AI is always there. And the last one I've seen, the little ones, is not on the journalism, but on the all the back office stuff. So membership outreach, fundraising, grant proposals. Like we're finding much more eager, not much more, but a lot of eager work there. Like a lot of our salespeople like do so much manual work of like generating sales leads, generating proposals for clients, doing grant reports on grants. None of that can be 100% offboarded to AI, of course, but if you can offboard 50% of it and you worry about the final 50, it makes a big difference. So I find, I guess, those are some of the things I see little newsrooms responding to.
And we'll have a class actually in the fall on that, on some applications for business side tasks. Thanks to Jean-Guire from CCM, who said you have to have that. Any last question or comment?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you so much, Rodney. So
Thank you.
Rodney not only has an amazing project, but what I really wanted you to notice also is that the project continued, right? It has evolved. He didn't just like do the project for our program and then kind of leave it and moved on and, forgot about it. It kind of evolved. Not every project is going to be like this, but it could happen like this. It could be that, this is version 1, what you're working on this summer and into the fall is going to be version 1 of something that will continue evolving. And your understanding of the technology and its power and its applications to your work will also continue evolving, right? So kudos for Rodney to continue with this passion project of yours that could become really important for your newsrooms. Okay, so I'll take another 5 minutes. We'll end early, but I need to tell you some things. I promised Kyle to tell you a few things, and I don't want to disappoint Kyle, and neither do you, I'm sure. So the first thing is the feedback survey. You know the drill. I put the link in the chat, but it'll also be on Slack and wherever else. Please do the feedback survey. And then the second thing is that this is our last class before the summer break. That's not our last class forever because we will meet again. September 16 is when we reconvene for a class about preparing for the future with Sam Guzik from WNOAC. It's going to be fun. In between that, basically your next step now is that next week, the week of June 23rd, you're supposed to have a one-on-one session with your coach. So make sure you have that on your books and you schedule this. This is to get individual feedback for your project so far. You should talk about what you're going to be doing over the summer so you can keep moving the project forward. If you still have like a roadblock, if you have doubts, questions, this would be the time to ask your coach this. Again, so we do take a break from class in July and August, but we might schedule, depends, how much bandwidth we'll have. But we could do a peer circle just to chat about the projects and just keep in touch. And just keep the momentum going. So if you're interested in that, let us know as well. I think there might be a question on that in the feedback survey. We could try to do that, but generally you are free, my little birds, free to go and enjoy and play with the AI and serve your audiences. And it's been a pleasure. I can't wait to see you guys again. And we are here on email or on Slack if you have any questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Rodney gave his email and he gave his LinkedIn. I'm sorry, go ahead, Calvin.
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you.
Wonderful. Well, then, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.